Moi tov.
Miriam, Shavua
Hi.
Tov.
Shavua tov. Moi tov. I see you're in full Pesach mode somehow.
Any other way to be?
I don't know.
I mean, we're like 3 days in already. We're
I was
halfway.
just gonna say it's already been 3. Well, actually, not 3 days. 2 days. Let's not
We're on the third day.
we're on the third day, right? So how was?
Wonderful. I love a 3-day chag. I can't get
Yeah.
enough.
Oh, hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Shavua tov. Moi tov.
Moadim Simcha.
Chagim uzmanim lesason.
Wow, well done, James. To get started, it is 45 minutes, right?
That's how I count it.
I have a lot of cleaning up to do too, so let's do this.
I had a lot of cleaning on Friday. What didn't you do already?
Very full house for Chag, thank God. But
Baruch Hashem. Who did you have?
my parents were here.
Very nice.
My brother came with 3 of his kids by himself, and a sister who came with 2 of her kids by herself. So
That is full.
a lot of vaccinated adults, a lot of children who weren't vaccinated. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens, right?
I got my first dose.
Congratulations.
Oh, congratulations. I
Thanks.
thought you wouldn't be eligible till next week.
She goes out.
I am.
Okay. So today, I think today's daf, again, I get so confused, just to be honest with you, but I think it's chet today. I think is the right daf.
Yep.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Pesach.
8,
Yeah. The
Okay.
29th is 8.
correct. So we're going to start at Zion Amabad at the new parak, which is the 3rd parak of Shekalim. I hope you've been learning it so
We
far.
say Chet, he said Zion.
What?
We said Chet, you said Zion.
Well, Zion Amabad at the bottom. We're going to get started. I'm going to catch up. So it's just a few lines in the bottom. So the Mishnah says, they're called halachot here in the Yerushalmi, that b'shlosha prakim b'shana tormim et halishka. There are 3 times in the year where they basically take truma from the lishka. Remember what we said earlier last week is that everyone would bring their shkalim, they throw them in a big room, maybe they had a vault or something in there, and then several times a year they would walk in and they would take out a bunch of them to spend to pay for the carbonot. That was the way they took out deposits from the bank. So they used to do that 3 times a year. Well, the first time is Beprosa Pesach, which means we're going to see in the Gemara 15 days before Pesach, and Prosa Atzeret, Beprosa Chag, before each holiday, and the purpose was to use the money and buy carbonot. Vehim, Granot Shel Ma'aser Behima. Those are also the times which set aside Ma'aser Behima, Divrei Rabbi Akiva, which means that if you have animals that, remember, Ma'aser Behima is that if you have animals that are born, every 10th animal has to be brought as a karban, right? Like Ma'aser Sheni. So you separate animals, you get to the 10th one. Remember, you put them in a pen, you let them walk out. You say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th one is Ma'aser Behima. So you have to take animals that are born in different times of the year and put them together in a group. You can't take animals from year 2021, maybe, and put them with 2022. Of course, that's not what the Gemara cares about, but you can't mix years. So there are 3 granot for Maaser Behema, and they're also 15 days before each holiday, which means that you're supposed to put your animals together into a pen and take out each 10th one as a karban in that time of the year. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai Omer, the Mishnah continues, Ben Azai says, Be'asum Tisha Ba'adar, he has different dates, not Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is 15 days before Nisan, but one day earlier, the 29th of Adar, Echad B'Sivan, so not 15 days before Atzeret, but the first day of Sivan, U'Be'asum Tisha Ba'av, and the 29th day of Av, meaning a month before Rosh Hashanah. Rebbe Lezer, which in our text is Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Yoshua Omrim, that the 3 times are Echad b'Nisan, Echad b'Sivan, Chavtet be'Elul, the 29th day of Elul, which is essentially the first day of Tishrei. But Lama Amru b'Chavtet be'Elul, why did they say the 29th of Elul, not Amru Echad b'Tishrei? Yom Tov, because the first day of Tishrei is a holiday called Rosh Hashanah, and Yevshar la'aser b'Yom Tov, you can't take ma'aser on Yom Tov. So he has a third opinion. This is Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon, who say that it's the first day of Nisan, which agrees with Rabbi Akiva, the first day of Tishrei, which is essentially really the last day of Elul, which agrees with Rabbi Akiva. And the third date, they disagree, and they say it's the first day of Sivan, not the 15 days before Shavuot, like Ben Azai. Says the Gemara, Am Rabbi Avo, ha kol hein ditaninam pros. Whenever, stop me if any of the language is unclear, because all the language is unclear. But anytime that it says pros, it means palga. Pros means half. And so when we say pros atzeret or pros chag, it means 15 days before the chag, because it's palga de shloshim yom kodem l'moed shedoshim le'ochotav. As we all know, for 30 days before the holiday, you're supposed to start talking about the holiday. And so half of that time is when you're supposed to actually take away the money or separate the money to buy karbanot. In granot the maaser, we said, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, why are these times chosen as the granot for maaser? Now, if you recall, and we're gonna have this in a couple months, actually, in a very short time, in Rosh Hashanah, which I think comes after Yuma, if I'm correct. So it's a couple months. The maaser, there's a Rosh Chodesh for maaser behima. If you recall, the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah is a machloket, whether it's echad be'elul or echad be'tishrei. But what that means is that every animal born before the first day of Elul, let's say, is from 1 year. Every animal that's born after the first day of Elul is from the next year. So what do we mean when we say there are 3 periods for separating it? There's only 1 period for Rosh Hashanah. So why are there 3 periods? It says Rabbi Yochanan, mipnei shein pirkei leida. That's when the animals give birth. So that the animals have different times when they give birth. Some give birth before Pesach, some give birth before Shavuot, some give birth before Sukkot, as we all know in this call. When animals give birth, it's a few months after they conceived, right? So there's seasons of conception. And so that's why there are sort of waves of animal births, and that's why you take maaser during those waves. Rav Acha, Rav Tancha Bar Chia, b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Kadesh tehei behema mitzuya lo leregalim. We do it for a different reason. We want you to have, remember, if you have, let's say you have a flock of animals, right? And 20 animals are born. You can't use those animals until you take maaser. Right, so you might be keeping them in the pen, you're feeding them everything, but you're waiting for a sort of a sizable number in order to take maaser. We want you to take maaser 2 weeks before the Chag, because then you'll have animals that need to go up for Ola Regel, that need to go up to be brought in the Beit HaMikdash. And so we want you to have animals available. It could be if you take maaser, 6 weeks before the Chag, you won't have a bunch of animals before the Chag, you won't have enough animals to bring up to do for your karbanot. So we want you to do it right before the holiday. Amar Rav Yudin, shelo yavi l'dei bal ta'acher. There's a whole other reason, which is that once you separate an animal to be maaser, you have to do it within 12 months. If you don't do it within 12 months, you're over a lo ta'aseh of bal ta'acher. And so we want you to do it, separate it right before you go up to Yerushalayim for the holiday. Otherwise, we're afraid that you're going to delay and miss the opportunity. Amar Rabbi Yosa, and in fact, this is a machlok about what Rabbi Yosa means, but one opinion is, Kol ha-mashed tivlo over b'bal ta'acher. Anyone who has tevel, meaning you have grain, you haven't taken truma, right? So you might think, it's not your problem. You got a storehouse full of grain. When you're ready to take truma, you take truma. Says Rabbi Yosa, it's wrong. Midrabanan, you have to take it off at maybe as early as you can, or on these granot, if we're talking about maaser behima, because otherwise you're over a midrabanan of bal ta'acher. Okay. Continues the Gemara now on top of Daf Chet. Taman Taninan, we learned here, Reb Meir Omer Be'achad Be'elul, this is the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah that I quoted earlier, that the Rosh Hashanah for Maaser Behima is the first day of Elul. Be'achad Be'elul, Rosh Hashanah Maaser Behima. Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon Omrim Be'achad Be'tishrei, the first day of Tishrei. And again, what that means is that if you have 5 animals that are born in Av, and 5 animals that are born in Elul, according to the second opinion of Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, that's 10 animals that were born in 1 year, and you have to take Maaser. And according to the first opinion, Rabbi Meir, it was 5 in 1 year, 5 in the other year. You didn't have 10, you don't have to take any maaser at all. So, and obviously the same thing for 5 born in Elul and 5 born in Tishrei. Says Ben Azai, I'm not so sure. Ben Azai says, Elulim, it's a funny term, right? The animals born in Elul, mitasrim b'fnei atzman. They have their own, year basically for maaser. Meaning, if you have 10 animals born in Elul, you bring maaser. If you have 20, you bring for 2. If you only have 5 born, there's no maaser at all. And before Elul is 1 year, Tishrei and on is 1 year. Elul is its own space. Amar Rav Huna, but Rav Huna, of course, remember, I need to tell me is Rav Huna. Taima de Rabbi Meir, the reason for Rabbi Meir is because Ad Kan hit matzot leleid min hayishanot. Up till this time, they're going to give birth from the last year, meaning the majority of animals, or the vast majority of animals, conceive. Remember we said in Chorot that the conception of a behima daka, which is the majority of animals, is 5 months.
Nice.
Like the pregnancy, not conception, pregnancy. And so if you do the math, right, animals that are conceived, or animals that conceive before Rosh Chodesh Nisan will give birth before Rosh Chodesh Av, Nisan, Iyar, Tishrei, Sivan, Tammuz, right? So most animals conceive in the spring, early spring, and therefore they're going to give birth before Rosh Chodesh Av, before Rosh Chodesh Av, correct. So that's why that's the time, okay? Sorry, before Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, yeah. Before Rosh Chodesh Elul. So that's why you have the time. That's when they give birth. But after that, Matchilot Leilei Min HaChadashot, that's from the new year. Rabbi Yossi bar Abun b'shem Rav Huna said, time of Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon is because of this pasuk. There's a pasuk that we quote. The pasuk is in Tehillim. It says, Lavshu Karim Hatzon. The sheep are wearing their clothing, which we say means their pregnancy, right? They got a big belly. Ela b'chirot. Those are the animals that are come from the early conception, meaning pre-Nisan. The amakim yatfu bar, the valleys are filled with grain. That's after Nisan, when the grain is growing. And those are the animals that are conceived. Ela filot. Those are the late animals. Says the pasuk, yitro'a'u, they will make noise together. Af yashiru, they will sing. Elu ve'elu nichnasim l'dir l'hitaser. They can go together. You can mix the early animals and the late animals. You mean you can mix the animals that conceived in pre-Nisan and post-Nisan because they all come for 1 year, and therefore you can include that all in one maaser. Amar ben Azai, now said ben Azai, ho ve'elu omrim kach. Tanakama says that it's Rosh Chodesh Elul. Ve'elu omrim kach, and then the Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua say, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon say that it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, right? Then we should compromise. You lulim mitashrim b'fnei atzman. The Elul animals are maser on their own. Haketzad nola lo b'chamisha ba'av. This is how the girsas change. If 5 animals are born in Av and 5 animals in Elul and 5 animals in Tishrei, then ein mitzarfin. They don't combine according to Ben Azai, because pre-Elul is one group, Elul is one group, and Tishrei is another group. Nola lo b'chamisha b'tishrei b'chamisha ba'av. If you have 5 born in Tishrei and 5 born in the next Av, 10 months later, that's the same year. And Harei Elo Mitzdarfin. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Ben Azai, remember, Ben Azai was a teacher of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Eliezer. How could Rabbi Shimon says it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, right? And Ben Azai says, well, since we don't know, we do both. Ben Azai is their teacher. What do you mean you don't know? He should make up his mind. Ask the Gemara, Ben Azai Machriyal Tevrei Talmidavata. Is Ben Azai, clarifying or sort of like neutral in the words of his Talmidim? If he's the authority, he should tell us how it is. Says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Yirmiyah of Rabbi Mesha, B'Shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak said it's not the machloket between his students, meaning between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir. It's chinechliku ala avot ha'olam. This is an old argument from the fathers of the world. Who are the fathers of the world? Who are the avot ha'olam? Man minhu, avot ha'olam. Tani Rabbi Yuna, Kamei, Kumei, Rabbi Yirmiyah, that's Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. The machloket Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. So this was an ancient machloket. Ancient, it was not so ancient. It was 1 generation before Ben Azai. There was a machloket Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva about whether Rosh Chodesh for Maaser Behima was the first day of Elul or the first day of Tishrei. And that's why Ben Azai said you should do both. Says the Gemara, but this is Yoto Meret, Ben Azai Chaver v'Talmid HaYid Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai was both a partner, meaning a chaver, and a student of Rabbi Akiva. Because in Tema Rabbi, if you say that Rabbi Akiva was his teacher, how could he say, well, let's compromise? Rabbi Akiva says one thing, Rabbi Shmuel says another. Let's do in between. If Rabbi Akiva is his teacher, he should go like his teacher, right? He shouldn't compromise between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. He should just follow Rabbi Akiva. It must be that he was both a student of Rabbi Akiva and a contemporary and a peer or a chaver of Rabbi Akiva. So he didn't have to listen to everything he said. And in this matter, he didn't feel that Rabbi Akiva was necessarily correct. That says the Gemara, It Barnash Amar Rabbe. Would there ever be a person, Barnash means a man or a person, I guess, who would say to their teacher, Ho ve'elo amrukach, ve'elo amrukach. Ho ve'elo amrukach. Since these people said this, and these people say this, that we should do something, that we should just go in between. If it's a teacher, you got to listen to your teacher. Rabbi Avon b'shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak shamala min hada. Rabbi Avon said, I know that Ben Azai was a contemporary and a student of Rabbi Akiva from the following story. There's a Mishnah in Bava Batra where the Mishnah says, I'm not going to get into the details, but there's a machloka between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel about certain inheritance. And there's two cases where Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagree. And then a third case where we say everyone agrees that Beit Shammai admits to Beit Hillel that the halacha is X. Comes along Rabbi Akiva and says, no, they argue even in the third case. Okay? Says Ben Azai in the Mishnah, Amar le Ben Azai, ala chulukim anu mitzta'arim. We're already pained that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argue about the first two cases. Ela Shabbat lachlok aleinu ala shavim. At Hashavim, you're adding on that they argue about the one where we previously said they agree on, right? And now, how could Ben Azai say that to Rabbi Akiva if Rabbi Akiva is his teacher? Zot omer, it must be that Ben Azai was chaver v'talmid havid Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai was both a partner or a peer and a student of Rabbi Akiva, because in Tema Rabbe, if you say he was his teacher, it's Barnash Amar Rabbe, would a student say to their teacher, Ela Shabbat lachlok aleinu et hashavim, that you're arguing with us? So that's a kind of language that you would say to your contemporary, but not to your teacher, and therefore Ben Azai must have been both a student and a peer of Rabbi Akiva. Continues the Gemara, halfway down. Taman Taninan, we learned, this is the way we introduce a Mishnah in the Yerushalmi. It says in Mishnah in, I think this is in Rosh Hashanah. No, I'm wrong, it's in Bechorot. We're talking about Maser, about Bechor. Kol hanodim be'echad b'tishrei ad chavtet be'elo. Every animal, so we're still talking about Maser. Every animal that's born from the first day of Tishrei, which we call Rosh Hashanah, right? The first day of Tishrei until the 29th day of Elul of the next year, that's 1 year. Harei elu mitztarfin. They combine for Maaser. These are animals. Chamisha lefnei Rosh Hashanah v'chamisha la'achar Rosh Hashanah. 5 are born before and 5 after. Ein mitztarfin. They don't combine because they're 2 different years. Chamisha, lefnei hagoren. Remember, our Mishnah said that there are 3 times that you're supposed to separate these. Those are called the goren. Let's say one of the gorens is the first day of Nisan. Let's say 5 animals are born before the goren. Chamisha la'achar goren. Harei elu mitztarfin. They still combine because it's still within 1 year. It's just that that's when you're supposed to separate. Amar Reb Yosa, says Reb Yosa, Hada Amre, Ada Omeret, this is what we say, Maaser behima lo asuato lo kichanet, lo kishalish. Maaser behima is not like Maaser of trees and grain, which goes after, remember we learned, and again we'll learn in Rosh Hashanah, that you go batar chanata, which is when the ant plants, chanata is when they ripen, right, when they start to sprout flowers. And shlish is for trees, or not shlish, for things like zaitim, which is heviu shlish. Once they're a third done, which means that they're essentially edible, they're just not ripe yet. It's not like that, meaning it's when they're actually born, right? That the time that matters for maaser behima is when the baby comes out. And how do you know that? Because in temar kechanat, if it was like the trees, which are when they sprout, right, then of course animals sprout when they become pregnant, right, when they are conceived. So litzni kol mubarim be'echad b'tishrei, you should say anything that's pregnant from it shouldn't go after birth, it should go after pregnancy, right? If it was like a tree, which it goes after not when the fruit is ready, and again, these are some trees, but when it's starting to grow. So starting to grow is conception. So litzni kol mubarim be'echad b'tishrei, it should say any animal that's conceives during that time, not that's born. And in Tamar Bishlish, if you're saying it's when it's a third ready, now the Gemara's opinion here is that a third ready means edible, it's usable, right? A fruit, an olive, for example, is meant, of course, to stay on the tree for a long time. But once it's a third ripe, you can take it, and if you needed to, you could actually get something useful out of it. When does an animal become useful? Not when it's born, because if you recall, when an animal's born, you can't bring it as a carbon, right? You have to wait till it's 8 days old. So if it had to be useful, then you would only include animals that were born up to 7 days before the end of the month. Because even if it's born at the end of Elul, you can't bring it as a carbon because it's not within its 8th day yet. So if that was the case, it needed to be usable, in Tamar Kishlish, Litany, we should have taught Kol Anodin Ad Esrim B'Shnayim Be'Elul, to the 22nd day of Elul, so that by the 30th day of Elul, the 29th day, it's already the 8th day of the animal. So says the Gemara, that's the principle. Rabbi Shammai b'Shem Rabbi Bibi, Rabbi Chia said, no, not necessarily, because Kishlish, it could be it's Kishlish, it could be that it has to be a usable animal, but also it took Rabbi Shimon. They're acting like Rabbi Shimon's psak. Damar Rabbi Shimon, mechusar zman nichnas nadir hitaser. Rabbi Shimon had a very radical opinion in Bechorot that even an animal that's not able to be brought as a carbon because it's 5 days old, it can still be brought into the pen and be one of the maaser. And if you end up picking that animal, you just have to wait 3 days till you bring it as a carbon. But it's already ra'ui to become maaser, even though it's not ra'ui to be a carbon. And so then it could even be born the day before the end of the year. Now, come Rabbi Mana in Rabbi Shammai. Rabbi Mana got up with Rabbi Shammai. Amar le, at amrit chada milta. You're saying that on Tanan Taminan. In front of us, we learned that Ben Azai Omer, this was the Mishnah we just quoted, our Mishnah, ha'elulim, that animals that are born in Elul are mitasr natzman, they are by themselves. That implies the whole Elul. Afilu nolada esrim tesha be'Elul, right? If they were born up to the 29th day of Elul. Now, you just told me that, well, so how do you explain that? So maybe it's lach meimar. Maybe you're saying that Ben Azai Rabbi Shimon v'lo Rabbanan. That Ben Azai is going like Rabbi Shimon and not like the Rabbanan. Because kamad at Amar al Rabbanan, if he was saying like the Rabbanan, minichin shana haba, you would wait till the next year, right? If going according to the Rabbanan, an animal that's 5 days old cannot be used for maaser. You got to wait till it's 8 days old. And so if an animal is born on the 25th day of Elul, by the end of the year, it's only 5 days old, and it can't become maaser. So according to the Chachamim, you would have to be hayimet asrin in b'nei shnatan. They would have to be brought with the next year, right? Says the Gemara, are you kain at omer al de ben azai minichan the goren abba v'imdashulim b'nei elulim, right? Are you saying that Ben Azai is saying they're pushed off to the next year? Amei Rabbi Chia zot omeret. I'm 5 lines before the halacha, 4 lines. Yamim shabachar mechusar zman behen olin lo toch shnato. This is what we said, that a bechor, if you recall, that a animal that's a bechor, again, this is a separate halacha. An animal that's a bechor, remember, a bechor is a firstborn, right? A firstborn animal has to be given to the kohen. The kohen brings it as a karban. It has to be done within the first year of its life, right? So what about those 8 days? Do you count those 8 days as part of the year? Because it can't be brought as a carbon for those 8 days. So when we say a bechor is to be brought within its first year, is it the first year with the days or without the days? Says Rabbi Chia, we include those days. Amar Rabbi Mani, Amar Rabbi Yonah, Abba Shamala min Hada. We learned it from the following. It says in the pasuk, Kol haBechar asher yivaled. Any bechar that's born has zachar takdish. If it's a male, it becomes not much. Yeah. Well, anyways, zachar takdish haketza nishat leidato atmonel shana. That you start counting its year from the moment it's born, not from when it's 8 days old. And so that is the halacha by a bechor, and the same halacha would be true about maaser behima. Okay, continues the Mishnah. We're okay here? Everyone's still with me? I know it's complicated. I think it's complicated. Says the Mishnah, B'shalosh kubot shel shalosh sa'in torminet halishka. They would have 3 boxes, and each one would fit 3 sa'in. Sa'in is like, I don't actually know how much a sa'i is. We used to have, Charlie would tell us, but it's a couple liters, right? So, a box, a reasonable, like a big Amazon box. That's what the Rashbam said. No, a big box, right? So they would take 3 kupot of shalosh in each one, and they would be torminat al-lishka, and they would take coins out of the lishka and put it in these boxes, right, into the sort of the pushkas, right? And they would write on the box, katuv alein, aleph, bet, gimel, 1, 2, and 3. So you knew which one to use first. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, they weren't writing in Hebrew. Yivanit katuv alein, they're written in Greek, alpha, beta, gamma, right? Okay, that's as far as I can count too. So, and Eina Torim Nichnas. Now, the person who would go in would not go in lo bepargud chafot. You wouldn't wear any clothes that had folds in them, like sleeves. right? That could fold over because we're worried that you can hide coins in those folds, right? So we have to be very careful. Below minal, you couldn't wear sandals. Below or you can't wear shoes, minal. Below sandal, you can't wear sandals because you have to be barefoot, right? Below tefillin, you can't put your tefillin on because you might sneak some coins between, the straps of your tefillin. Below b'kamiyah, you can't be wearing like a necklace, right, a chain, because you could put it in there. Shema ya'ani, we're worried that you'll go in, right, you'll be the coin who's designated to take money, and then you'll become poorer. All your stocks will go down. And everyone's going to say, Yomru mi'avon alishkayani. Oh, the guy was stealing from Beit HaMikdash. That's why he got poor. Oh, Shema yashir. All your stocks will go up. You'll become rich. And then people will say, well, he got rich because he stole all the money. So you can't win, right? No matter what happens, if you go in, you win or you lose, people are going to blame it on you doing something wrong. Says the Mishnah, you got to be, it's not enough to be honest between you and God. You got to make sure that people think you're honest too. You've got to make the other people feel like you're doing the right thing. Just like you have to be clean in front of Hashem. You got to be clean in your actions, both from Hashem, but also from other people. As it says, you have to find favor in God, but also in mankind. Now, it says the Gemara, Taman Tanina, remember we have a Mishnah that we learned in Shabbos that said that if, let's say, you're COVID, let's say, you're sitting at, remember what the case was, you had to have a Beit Midrash outside. There was nowhere to sit. So they would take bales of hay and kupot to sit on, right? So the Mishnah said in Shabbos, Afilo mifanin, sorry, you can clear out, you can space out, I mean, you could pull out, Afilo arba v'chamesh kupot, even 4 or 5 containers to sit on. Yeah, and it's not considered too much melacha on Shabbat. Rabbi Zira Sha'al at Rabbi Yoshaya. Rabbi Zira asked Rabbi Yoshaya, the bottom line, Kamahu shirun shel kupot. How big is the containers that you can take out? Meaning, can you carry out, super big things? How large can they be? So Amar Lei, so he said back to him, turn the page, Nilmad satum min hamafurash. Well, the Mishnah didn't say, it's hidden, but let's learn it from another Mishnah that's clear. The Tanya, our Mishnah says, B'shalosh kupot, shalosh sa'in, chain tisha sa'in. Right, there are 3 kupot times, which each one had 3 sa'in, that's 9 sa'in. Remember, they did it 3 times in the year, which is Hein Esrim B'Sheva Sa'in, it's 27 altogether. Tarminat Alishka. And you would write on them, Katuv Aleim Aleph Bet Gimel, Mipnema Katuv Aleim Aleph Bet Gimel. Why did you write that on them? Lomar Mistapeg Min Harishona Kodem L'Shniya. You would use up number 1 before you went to box number 2, right? Umin Hashniya Kodem L'Shlishit. And so you see from here that a box is a box that can hold 3 sa'in of money, which is, as I said, a pretty substantial size. And that's what it means here. And so by Shabbos, it means the same thing. In the same vein, continues the Gemara, 6 lines from the top, Taman Taninan, we have a Mishnah that says, Hamotzi Yayin. Remember, we talked on Shabbos, you're not allowed to carry. And we said for everything that you carry, the shear is something usable. What's a usable amount of wine, says the Mishnah? Hamotzi Yayin, if you're carrying out wine, said the Mishnah, Kedei Mizigatakos. That is to dilute a cup. Remember that they had very concentrated wine, and so they would add water to it. So a shear of wine was not pure wine. It was an amount of wine that if you added the water would become drinkable, right? So how much was that? Rabbi Zeira Shal Rabbi Yoshaya, Kama Shirun Shal Kos. How big is a kos? Amarlei Nomot Satum and Hamafurash. It says about the 4 cups of Pesach. Should have learned this yesterday. Tani Rabbi Chia, Arba Kosot She'amru. What are the 4 cups for the Seder? Yeshnan Reviut Shel Yain B'italki. You can have 4 cups from 1 Revi'it. How do you do that? Because you take a quarter of a revi'it as the wine, you add 3 portions of water to 1 portion of wine, and you get a cup of wine. So on Shabbos, what you're not allowed to carry out is 1/4 of a revi'it, because that's the amount of wine that if you added water to it would make a glass of wine. I'm Rabbi Yossi Bar Avin, Mishum Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda. The Tani, as we learned in a Braita, Mayim, how much mayim can't you carry out on Shabbos? K'dei gmi'ah. The amount that you would swallow. If you don't, it's even less than that. It's to like rub on your eye to make it, for medicine probably. Yayin, the next line is, what about wine? Says the Braita Kedei Gimiyah. It's the amount that you would swallow, 1 mouthful. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's kedei mizigata kos. It's like the amount you would need to add water to and make it a full cup of wine, which, as I said, was a quarter of a revi'it, right? Ask the Gemara mazug b'kama. Let's say it's already diluted wine. It's like the wine we drink. How much can you not carry out on Shabbat? So says Gemara, Nishmeina min Hadad. You can learn it from the Braita. It says Mayim k'dei gamia, Rabbi Yehuda amar k'dei shofan et kilor. And the second part of the Braita says Yain k'dei gamia, and Rabbi Yehuda says k'dei mizigata kos. And therefore, it must be that it's a full revi'it, right? That's what it is that you're not allowed to carry on Shabbat. Ask the Gemara, Hada Amra, you said mazog k'dei mizigata kos, kama shirun shokos. How big is a cup? How big is a revi'it, basically? Reb Avin Amar titraton revia. Says Reb Avin, in our neighborhood, we have a measurement called a titraton. Again, I have no idea what that is. And you add a quarter to that. So a pound and a quarter, right? Just to use an obviously it's not what it means. But it's what we call a revi'it. Since we're on the subject of drinking 4 cups at the Seder, what if you are, let's say like us, you started very late and everyone's really tired. So you decide, forget about this whole Haggadah business. We got to drink 4 cups of wine. Let's just drink them one after the other. Okay? Probably be very drunk. But what if we drink them in one sitting? If you remember, we just discussed this a couple weeks ago in Psachim. Okay? Says the Gemara, Mida Amar Rabbi Manna, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Hallel, let's say, remember on Seder night you say Hallel. Said Rabbi Yossi, in Shaman Bebeit Knesset Yatsa. If you heard it in Beit Knesset, you don't have to repeat it at the Seder. You're Yotzei. Now, if you remember from your Seder last night, if you did 2 Sedarim, the only thing we do between the 3rd cup and the 4th cup is say Hallel, right? So if you are not saying Hallel at your Seder, then nothing is separating the 3rd and the 4th cup. And so clearly from the fact that Rabbi Yossi says, if you don't say Hallel and you already said in Shul, that's okay, it means that you don't really have to do anything between the cups. If you don't have to. You're supposed to, but you don't have to. And so you see from here that if you Hada Amra, you see from here, in Shatan Bikrach Echad, Yatza. If you drink them in one sitting, meaning one after the other, you're Yotze. Again, not ideal, but you're Yotze. Ask the Gemara now, further rules of the 4 cups. Again, day late. Ma'u l'shtotan b'piskan. Can you drink them b'pisuk? Pisuk means like you sip. Instead of drinking the whole cup, drink a little bit and then a little bit more. Can you sip it? Says the Gemara, of course you can. Klum amrushi yishteh. Does it say that you have to drink it a specific way? Meaning, sorry. Klum amrushi yishteh always says that you should drink it. Lo kadesh yishteh, lo yishtaker. It didn't say you have to get drunk, right? It doesn't say that you have to drink them one full cup. Just drinking it is enough. And so if you drink it and you separate it, meaning you space it out, that's okay also, right? Im shata bepiskan afu einam yishtaker. Okay, what about drinking wine of shviut for your this is a complicated what this means, but some say it means for the 4 cups. So you yotze. Tani Rabbi Oshaya yotzim b'yain shel shviut. Then in fact you can be yotze your hafdal, your 4 kosot on Pesach with wine of shviut. There's a machloket in the Mefarshim whether this is shviut wine before the biur or after the biur. Right? Remember on Shemitah, which is next year, right? You're not allowed to have things after Zman Biur, after they're not available in the field. You're not allowed to keep things in your house. So there's one opinion that you can still keep it for Da'ar B'Kosot because mitzvot lav lehanot mitzvah. Doing a mitzvah is not considered to be enjoyment, even though we enjoy it, right? But anyway, there's other interpretations as well. Ask the Gemara, we're just midway through Chet Amabet. Mahu latzet bekunditon. Can you be yotze with kunditon? Kunditon is a drink that is sweetened, I believe. Right? A wine that is mifusam, that has, like you put spices and cloves or things like that in the wine. So midatani bar kapara taught kunditon kiyayin. So kunditon is just like wine, and therefore hada amra yotzim biyayin kunditon. You can be yotze your arba kosod on Pesach with spiced wine, okay? In case anyone did that. Mahu latzet biyayin mizugin. Can you use wine that's diluted? Now, the Rishonim point out that the Gemara already said you can, but presumably we didn't have that earlier. Gemara says, Gemara, of course you can. Midatani Rabbi Chia, arba kosot she'amru yotzin behen bein chayin, whether they're fresh, meaning they don't have any water added. Bein mizugin ubilvad sheyeh behem tam umara yayin. They have to have the taste and the appearance of wine, and then you could be yotze for your arba kosot, no matter what. Amr Yirmiyah mitzvah latzek b'yayin edom. It's a mitzvah to have red wine for your arba kosot. Again, I hope this is not a day too late. Shenemer al tira yayin ki it adem. It says in the pasuk, wine is red ki yitem bekos eino. Tani mivushal. This is very relevant for halacha. Wine that's boiled, right? That's cooked, is kimituval. It's like wine that is spiced, meaning as long as spiced wine is okay, mivushal wine is okay. Some understand that means for nisachim on the mizbeah. Ask the Gemara, ma latzek b'yayin mivushal, but can you use it for kiddush, right? Which again, very relevant question for the seder, right? Can you use wine that's yayin mivushal for the seder for kiddush on Friday night? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yonah, yes, yotzim b'yayin mivushal. You can use yayin mivushal, and that's Rabbi Yonah the Tameh. That's Rabbi Yonah who had previously said the same opinion. Rabbi Yonah kan avishati arba kosi de pischa. When Rabbi Yonah would drink the 4 cups of Pesach of the Seder, havi chazik reisha ad chaga. He would be holding his head. He had a headache until Shavuot. So he was not a very high tolerance for alcohol, and 4 cups really set him back for a month, a month and a half. And therefore, the Mefarshim explain that yayin mevushal is generally less potent than yayin chai. So therefore, he would have yayin mevushal because it made him a little bit more functional if he was able to have it. So he was not I guess this is before grape juice, right? So where are we? Chamite. This is
It was before refrigeration.
It was definitely before refrigeration. Are you saying that's why the wine? Chamite chada. Chamite chada matrunita apoy nihir. This is a story we're about to get to about Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Lai. He was once seen by a matrunita. Remember, matrunita were like these society ladies in Rome that we always quote. They're foil, of course, right? Some gossip maybe saw Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai and saw that his face was nihirin. He had a shiny face, okay? And we all know why people get a shiny face, right? So she said to him, where am I? She said, Chada, no, sorry, Amra, she said, right? Saba, my old guy, right? Which he was an old man. He was a scholar, Rabbi Lai. You must have one of these 3 traits. Oh, the shati chamra, or either you're a drunk, right? Which of course we know people drink, get ruddy and very shiny faces, and noses for sure. Oh, the malvi beribidat, or you're a loan shark, because loan sharks have the same reputation, right? Again, the Mefarshim say, it's like an easy business. You sit there and count your money all day, and you take advantage of the people. Oh, the negado chaziriat, or you raise pigs. Again, I don't know much about raising pigs, but they say that also it was a occupation that afforded a lot of leisure time and a lot of profit. So you're basically, you're a guy who just sits back and either drinks a lot or does these irreputable businesses, and that's why your face looks this way. Amrullah, he said back there, Tefach rucha dahi itzda. This woman's spirit should be deflated, meaning she should, whatever that means. Sometimes it means, whatever it means. She should be taken down a few pegs. I don't have any of these 3 things. Ella upani shchiachli. I learn a lot. I'm a scholar, right? I'm at the opan. The hachiktiv, as the pasuk says, chachmat adam ta'ir panav. A wise person will have a shining face. So the shine that you see on my face is because I'm a scholar, not because I'm a drunk. And Rabbi Avo, Ati L'Tveria, Rabbi Avo once came to Tveria. Chamune Talmidei de Rabbi Yochanan, the students of Rabbi Yochanan saw that Apoy Nehurin, right, that his face was shining. He also had a very shiny complexion. So Amrin Talmidin Rabbi Yochanan, the Talmidim said to Rabbi Yochanan, Ashkech Rabbi Avo Sima. Rabbi Avo found a sum. Again, I think most people translate this as a treasure, right? But you can also say it's like, he's got some good stuff. Clearly, he's having a good time, right? So he's drinking or he's something, but he's got something really good. He's shining. Ata legabe. Now, so he came to Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei my oraita charata shamata. Rabbi Yochanan correctly intuited that the reason his face was shining is because he had some great scholarly research that he was very happy about. And so Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "Oh, what new Torah have you heard?" And Amalei, he said back to him, Rabbi Yovo said back to him, Tosefta Atika Kada Alai. Tosefta Atika. I found an ancient Tosefta. I found this great old manuscript I'm so excited about. So Kara Alan, so Rabbi Yochanan said about him this pasuk of Chachmat Adam Tayir Panav, that a wise person will have a shining face. Amar Rav Chanan, Luga de Oraita. When the Torah talks about a lug, that is Tamunta Atika de Muraisa, the Tzipori. That is the same shear as the Tamunta Atika, the ancient Tamuta that we used for Muraisa in Tzipori. Tzipori in the fish market, remember Muraisa was the herring, right? They had, I guess you would go up to this place and you would say, I want to buy, 5 measures of herring. So they had a standard measurement that everyone trusted that they would use. So that's the same shear. The ancient Tamnuta of Tzipori is the same shear of a lug in the Torah. Amar Rav Yonah v'chachmanala debate Rabbi Yanai have mechilim badvash. Says Rabbi Yonah, I know about it because in the Beit Rav Yanai they used to use this to put honey into. Now, Tani, we learned chatzi shminit tvernit hayishana. 1/8 of the eighth of the measurement in Tferit of the ancient one, the Shana, the old measurement of Tferia, is a revi'it. Okay, that a revi'it equals. Remember, we struggle till today, and again, I'm sure everyone at their Seder had the same struggle. What's a revi'it of Yayin, right? They had the same struggle, so they said it's this measurement of an eighth of this measurement that we use today in, it's a half of the measurement that's called a shminit that we use today in Tferia, or that we used to use in Tferia, Tferia Yishana. Says Rabbi Yochanan on the top line, Hadin Didan, that is the same thing we use. Today we have the same shminit in Tferia. Says, well, then why Lamakar le Atika? Why do you say the ancient shminit? If it was still around in the time of Rabbi Yochanan, why do you call it the ancient measurement of the shminit? It's the current measurement of the shminit, right? It's like if I said, it's half of an ancient silver dollar. And then Rabbi Yochanan comes up and says, it's half of our current silver dollar. So why don't you just say that? Says the Gemara, it must be min, again, the Girsa here is a little bit unclear, right? But some say, Lama Nikra Shma Atika. Why was it Lama Nikra Atika? Min begin dahavi biyoma. It must be, I'm sorry, this is the question. If it's the same thing that you have in my day, in this day now, so some say it amri dahavi ira v'rafta. It's because the measurement of shminit changed over time. It got bigger and it got smaller and then it got bigger, right? So Zira is small and Rafta is big. So meaning it got smaller and then got bigger again. So by the time of Rabbi Yochanan, it had made a comeback to the same shear, but they were referencing the ancient one. The Istamri, some people say the Azira v'lo Azira kamad dahavit. It got smaller, but didn't get small as it was originally. Kama hu shir shalkos. Do a couple more lines, okay? Everyone still got patience? You're doing it, okay. Kama hu shir shalkos. What is the size of a kos that we know is a revi'it? Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Yossi ben Pazi, Rabbi Yossi bar Bibi b'shem Rabbi Shmuel said, Etzba'ayim al rum etzba umechza ushlish etzba. It's 2 finger widths. Remember we said in Psachim, we had the exact same Gemara, but a different answer. A thumb. Remember the etzba was the thumb. The 2 thumbs together, 2 whatever the size that is, depends how big your thumb is. By 2 etzba, and the third dimension is, and this is how the Gemara does it, you ready? An etzba and a half and a third. So this is like a fraction equation, right? So a half plus a third, which is 5/6. I cheated, but you can look it up, right? So they, I guess, did not know how to count or were not comfortable saying 5/6. So the Gemara says a half, 1 1/2 plus a third. So basically 1 and 5/6. Okay. And if you do the math, that's the reviat that we use. Now, Rabbanan, should we stop here or should we go a little bit more? What's the vote? No votes. I'm going to do a few more lines. David will be happy with me. Dove, whoever's doing tomorrow. Let's get to the next. We'll go all the way to the 2 dots. It's a little bit of I got it. It's not so complicated. Just takes time. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbanan de Kesari, right? Is that what I'm up to? No, I'm the line before. Tani, they learned Yavesh Kazai, Divrei Rabbi Natan. If you have wine, remember the shear of a wine is a reviat. What if you have wine that gets dried out? Right? Remember that they had dried wine where you can add water to it. It becomes either congealed or hardened. So what's the shear of a wine that went from being a liquid to being a solid? Says Rabbi Natan, it's a reviat. Okay. Where Rabbi Natan said it's a reviat. Oh yeah, the words are taken out, but we're going to read them. Yavesh Kazai Divrei Rabbi Natan. Rabbanan de Kesar Rabbi Yossi Bar Bibi b'Shem Shmuel Atia de Rabbi Natan Rabbi Shimon. They said that Rabbi Natan is going according to Rabbi Shimon. Kama de Rabbi Shimon Amar Revi'it. Right? Didn't Rabbi Shimon said, just like Rabbi Shimon said, that it's a Revi'it of wine if it's liquid. Kain Amar Rabbi Natan de Revi'it Likashi Karesh. That Rabbi Natan said it's a Revi'it that becomes hard. Well, yeah, but Kazayit will then become a Kazayit. So if you're going from a liquid measurement to a solid measurement, it's the same amount of wine. So a Revi'it is equal in liquid is equal to a Kazayit in solid. Rabbi Simon, B'Shem Rabbi Shulman Levi said, Maaseh b'pirdat Rebbe. Yeah, we're going to do it. Why not? There was a story with a donkey that was in the house of Rebbe, Shemeta, that died. Now remember, an animal that dies is a nevela. A nevela, especially a donkey, it's not a kosher animal, right? So a nevela is tameh. The meat of a nevela is tameh with the kazayit. The skin of a nevela, not the skin, the nails and the hair of a nevela is not tameh at all. Okay, and there's a debate as to what about the blood of a nevela. Does the dam of a nevela mitameh or not mitameh? This question comes up. Okay, what about the blood? So says the Gemara, an interesting question, an interesting point. There was once a donkey, where am I, that died in Rebbe's house, or Rebbe's family, Rebbe's compound. They said that the blood is not tameh mishum nevela. The blood does not have a status of nevela. V'shal Rabbi Eliezer at Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Eliezer at Rabbi Simon ad kama. How much blood is not tameh? Because there's 2 possible explanations. One explanation is that blood is never tameh. And the other explanation is that you didn't have enough blood, right? Because remember, how much blood you need to become tameh. So we said probably a revi'at, or if it's solid, meaning if it congealed, which happens when an animal dies, it would be the such size of a kazayit, right? So he asked, Rabbi Eliezer asked Rabbi Simon, how much blood were they mitaher? Lo ashkach, and he didn't answer. He didn't pay attention to it. Ashkach, he just ignored it. So then he asked Shal Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He asked Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and he said ad revi'it tahor, that it's only because it was less than a revi'it of blood, and therefore it's tahor. Yotem revi'it tameh. If it was more than a revi'it, it would be tameh. Uba'ash Rabbi Eliezer, and he was angry at Rabbi Eliezer. Al delo chazarbe, right? That he didn't answer him. He ignored him. So he was angry at Rabbi Eliezer for ignoring his question. Rabbi Simon, he was angry at Rabbi Eliezer al chazali Rabbi Simon shmuata, because he didn't answer Rabbi Simon. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi was angry at Rabbi Eliezer. Rav Bibi haviyativ matni. Maybe we should. Yeah, I think we're gonna stop here. I'm gonna stop at Rav Bibi. Good place to stop. Sorry. So in the middle of the sugya of how much blood of an animal is tamei nevela. It's a little bit of a complicated sugya, so we'll stop.
Rav Bibi rules the night.
Rav Bibi rules the night. Maybe. Okay. Shavua
Thank you.
Chatzah.
Shavua tov.
Everyone. I think we're gonna try as much to do this week as we can. God willing, we'll be able to teach next week on Sunday night on Motzei Chag. Okay.
Looking forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Pesach.